Hello, and welcome back to the Carbon Capture Magazine podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Piekarski, and today we have an extra special Double Danielle feature for you all, as today's guest is Danielle Flagg, CCS Project Development Manager at Sargent and Lundy. Welcome to the podcast, Danielle.
Thanks, Danielle. I'm glad to be part of a special Danielle edition.
Yes, thank you for joining us. So let's kick things off by sharing a bit about yourself as well as Sargent and Lundy, please.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So as you said, I'm Danielle Flagg, a project development manager in the CCS space at Sargent Lundy. I have about 15 years of experience with a background in air quality control systems. And I've been working with Sargent Lundy since I graduated college. Sargent Lundy is an engineering and consulting firm founded in 1897. Our founders were actually contemporaries of Thomas Edison. And so we kind of grew up with the power industry. And that was our primary focus for most of our history. In the last few years, we've gotten more into industrial as we've kind of driven further into decarbonization. So it's been an exciting time. We do projects kind of across the range of decarbonization pathways, including, renewable energy, energy storage, hydrogen, and carbon capture. We've been active in the CCS market for about 10 to 15 years, and we've done over 100 projects kind of across the gamut of different designs. So a pretty large company that does a lot, but my focus is primarily in the carbon capture space.
Awesome. And I know that Sargent and Lundy has a pretty broad skill set when it comes to CCS technology development. What are some of the stages of CCUS tech development that Sargent and Lundy uses?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's kind of two different categories of development when we think about CCS. One is the technology development and one is project development. So technology development kind of has about four main phases that we kind of put the categories that we put technology development into. The first is research, where it's really the development of a concept, an initial proof of just the concept in a small lab scale. Then there's development. That's really where you take that concept and demonstrate it in real world applications. So that's what we talk about, doing pilot testing for technologies to kind of demonstrate at a small scale that they work in a specific application. From then, technologies move into demonstration, which is really where you're seeing technologies implemented on full scale installations in the real world. These are the first of a kind applications. Petronova is a great example of a first of a kind demonstration project. And after that, technologies really move into deployment, but there's still kind of this bridge to commercialization. So going from your first of a kind, second of a kind to just truly commercial offering. So there is quite a bit of time and development that happens on these technologies. But then on the other side of CCS projects, it's the project development. And that also has phases where you kind of look at doing preliminary feasibility work to define whether or not a project even really makes sense. Then moving into feed study work, which is really something that's required for these newer technologies to really do a more in-depth design and cost estimate to determine the economics and viability of a project. And that's really when you then move into a deployable project.
Interesting. So of all the steps necessary to get to project deployment, which would you say is the most challenging one?
Ooh, that's also a big question. So there's a lot of different things that go into that. So one is, picking your technology and picking a technology that makes sense for you and for your application. So depending on, if you're a power plant or an industrial facility, you have different requirements and different needs. You have different CO2 concentrations. So picking a technology and identifying one that is developed far enough that meets your scale and application is an important part of doing kind of upfront feasibility work and developing a project. But there's some other challenges and things to consider as you're developing an overall integrated CO2 capture project. And that is, where is the CO2 going? Access to sequestration or offtake can be challenging for a lot of the country. There are certain areas where you just have to go a lot further to get to sequestration, whereas there are some facilities that all they basically have to do is go down into the ground. And some of the other things that we're seeing is as a challenge as we kind of move into the future, especially in today's market, is just availability of resources, not just the technology vendors, but the constructors and also access to equipment. We've seen a sharp increase in lead time for critical components. So we're just seeing more and more activity, which is driving more and more competition in the market to get the resources that are needed to do these projects.
Yes. So you had mentioned the Petronova project that Sargent and Lundy had worked on. What are some other projects that your company is currently working on?
Yeah, so Petronova was a great project. We got involved from the very beginning. That's really what kind of threw us into the CCS space. Since then, we've done over 100 projects. I think we have over 50 active projects right now, and those range pretty widely from a lot of feasibility studies, looking at power and industrial applications, things like combined cycles, coal plants, cement applications, steel. Um, we're also looking at direct air capture technology feasibility studies and kind of trying to figure out how to fit those in. We're doing quite a few feed studies, again, looking at the range of power applications as well as industrial applications. Many of those are funded by the DOE, but we're seeing more and more privately funded feed studies as well. And then there's another side of our business where we are really actively working with technology vendors to develop their technology. So we're actually doing some detailed design right now for some pilot projects. One is an amine-based capture system that's going to be installed at a combined cycle, and there's another membrane system that's going to be installed at a coal plant. So it's been really interesting to work with these technology vendors as they scale up to these larger applications and kind of advance their overall technology readiness level.
Yeah, it sure sounds interesting. I had seen on the website that you and some others on the Sargent and Lundy crew had published a white paper on the best practices and insights for carbon capture projects. Could you tell us a little bit more about that white paper?
Sure. Yeah, that white paper was developed in conjunction with our consulting group, and they primarily work for banks and potential investors. So that white paper was developed with the perspective of an investor looking at evaluating a project. So it kind of talks through at a high level things that you look at to evaluate a project's feasibility and readiness. Things like technology development, how advanced is the technology, plant integration, which is definitely something that is a very large part of doing these feasibility and feed studies is determining where are you getting the kind of significant utilities that are required to run these systems, and what are the impact to the plant and the facility. The overall project economics is another thing that it kind of talks about. And then looking at your CO2 offtake and the permitting status, because those are two pretty large pieces to developing the overall project and can be relatively long lead time items as well in terms of project development.
Right. Yeah, I'd seen that and I thought, wow, that seems like a really great resource to our listeners and our readers of Carbon Capture Magazine. That was the last question I had for you, Danielle. Did you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I would just like to say, Sargent Lundy, we've spent most of our time as a company has been kind of learning these new things and helping the power industry implement new technologies and things like that. So it's really a place that we really enjoy working. And we're kind of seeing this decarbonization market as this really new and exciting time for us, where we're getting to explore a lot of new things and applications. So it's been really fun. And obviously, we believe that decarbonization is an all of the above solution. And so we're happy to be kind of working not only in the carbon capture space, but the hydrogen space. We're looking at new nuclear, small modular reactors, renewables and energy storage. And it's really been an exciting time across our company. So,
yes, an exciting time for the whole industry. Again, we are joined by Danielle Flagg, CCS Project Development Manager at Sargent and Lundy. Danielle, thank you again for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in to today's podcast. If you're interested in being a podcast guest, please reach out to Carbon Capture Magazine. And until next time, have a great day.